Hey there, nerds. Jimmy here.
I'm James.
And we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which we can't talk about a lot because there aren't enough product. Tron.
One of the best film duologies, because there's not a lot of film duologies. We both dearly love Tron. It's just one of those fun movies to put on in the background, and then when you're watching it, you're like, oh dear God, I forgot how incredible this movie was. And it's so much fun to always go back and rewatch. And with the most recent news on Tron Ares, there is a lot of hope and good stuff on the way.
So the director of Norwegian descent, actually he is Norwegian, just released info that they are now back to production. It got halted because of the strike for writers and actors, but now they are in production, moving forward. And the piece that surprised me was the story seems to be taking place more in our world than the grid. That really surprised me.
Now, this is fascinating because what was said was that Ares, played by Jared Leto, is a sentient AI or sentient program that ends up in the real world and isn't prepared for human contact. What's fascinating is that we've seen a very similar concept play out in Tron Legacy with Korra. However, she has the proper adjustment to human contact, shall we say, and she manages to make it to the real world. What I find most interesting, though, is that to get to the real world, for a program, any program, they have to have a human disc. So how the hell does Ares get into the real world?
And that was definitely established with Flynn being stuck in Legacy, being stuck on the grid. And the reason why he stayed outside of everything going on was so that Clue would not be able to get his disc. And that was how Korra became used to humans, although I'm not saying Flynn was the most human of humans, but that she became normalized because all that time with Flynn. So to have a program like Ares, not exactly sure what his programming was, but if you think about what Clue was trying to accomplish, and we go back to this line all the time, am I still supposed to create the perfect program?
Yeah.
It's like, well, then he did according to his programming, and it did not work for the real world. So what is Ares going to do?
And what I'm very curious about is to see how this plays into the rest of the Tron lore with Tron, Flynn, Sam, and Encom and all of these established characters, because what we've been given with the two movies and the short-lived TV show has never really been a lot to go off of with Tron lore. We do have comic books, we do have games, but even then, a lot of those tend to sit either super closely tight to what's already been established or have nothing to do with it. And I really hope we do get to see classic Tron characters show up, because I think having to contend with a program in the real world would be a very interesting twist on Tron. And honestly, we could probably see an inverse where Ares does take a human disc and traps a human in the digital world, and now the human stuck in the grid has to find a way to get his disc back and to right everything.
And you bring up a good point, because in the first movie, a lot of the live action pieces we saw, meaning the real world pieces, those actors did become actors in the grid. The second one, not so much. Specifically, Cillian Murphy. We never saw him as a player on the grid. We have the cast, which I'm excited for. We have Cameron Monaghan, who is from Shameless, which I really enjoyed, but he's also the Jedi in the video game Jedi series, Jedi Outcast. Is that what it's called? Which I love the first game. I haven't been able to play the second game.
Wait, Jedi, the most recent ones?
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah, I know I'm forgetting. I don't think it's that Outcast.
Of course I'm blanking on it. Comments, flame us for it, because you're good at that.
But he's the redhead, which is awesome.
Oh, yeah. He better have an orange suit, because if he doesn't, I'm going to be mad.
Greta Lee, Evan Peters, who I'm hugely stoked to see. Obviously, he was recently in the Jeffrey Dahmer series, but he was also in the X-Men. He's done a lot of stuff, Kick-Ass.
And WandaVision.
WandaVision, yes. So I'm very curious to see how he's going to play out. We obviously have Jared Leto, Sarah Desjardins, and what I'm wondering is, because we haven't seen names like Cillian Murphy. Obviously, David Warner passed away, so we're not going to be able to see him. But we haven't seen any news about potentially Jeff Bridges, which understandable. He doesn't have to be in this because theoretically he became one with the grid in the last movie. And we haven't seen anything from Sam Flynn to see if he would be in the movie. So I'm curious who will be in this. I'm curious how this will play out as far as we're in the real world, predominantly from what we're understanding. How is that going to play out? Or is it going to be one of this sort of things? And I hate to reference the Matrix because I believe the Matrix is Tron. Like Tron was first and then they made the Matrix. Is it going to be one of these things where we think we're in the real world, but we're not?
It's a simulation in a simulation.
Yeah.
That'd be fascinating. What I really hope happens is that a lot of the big names from the Tron movies are kept hidden and that we do have cameos and appearances. And with the way it looks, I don't know if this will be tied to the Tron and Tron Legacy storyline. I wonder if it's going to sit outside of it and possibly be build up to a potential third movie in that trilogy, which if so, it gives the perfect amount of space to really build on the grid and world build a lot more and expand upon a lot of the concepts in the grid that they can really put to use if they were to make a third movie in the Tron Legacy trilogy. And I want to see more Tron Uprising. Please go watch this movie and support it because it means we get more Tron media and there's just the slightest chance we get a comeback of Tron Uprising, which did not deserve to get killed the way it did.
So some of the things that are making me nervous about this movie, and I want to be optimistic, I really do. Knowing Steve Lisberger made the original Tron, and basically he wasn't a big name, anything like that. So I hold out hope. But our director is really not known. He is working on the next Pirates of the Caribbean movie, but okay. Our writers, Jack Thorne and Jesse Wiggum, I know Jack Thorne is British. And he worked on one of my favorite TV shows of all time that is British called Skins.
Oh boy.
I really enjoy that. He also worked on the original Shameless, which was set in Britain. Enola Holmes, which I did enjoy, and the sequel, but you don't really have that suck it to you, this is what it's going to be. But what I do take from Skins and Shameless is they were sort of real world, down in the dirt, great dynamics, great dialogue. And that would be nice because that means we're not totally relying on special effects.
Absolutely.
So I would love to see that. Other writer really hasn't done anything that's of note. So
yeah, and
I'm nervous, but I'm optimistic.
And with the Enola Holmes, that brings up a good point. It could also play into a more mystery-based storyline with Ares because they would be an enigma. And I really do like the idea of it being very down to earth and grounded because the scenes they do have in the grid can be incredibly enhanced by making it a lot more human and a lot less spectacle. Because I think what's so brilliant about Tron is that you can really go into the nature of humanity and the philosophy of what it is to exist and to live with this kind of storyline. And I do hope they really just go full in on that philosophy because I feel like the first Tron movie dipped their toe in it. This Tron Legacy kind of put their foot in, and this is the opportunity for them to really just dive head first and play with that concept.
So let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Have you even seen Tron? Please say yes.
And remember, Flynn lives.